What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Sunbelt Syndicate with you from the first kick to the last pitch, and we're right in the middle of what feels like, the three most important sports is the ones we typically cover: football, basketball, baseball, and this guy has been keeping us along for the ride really well. So, Zach, man, what's been going on in your world? Finishing up school, and now you got other stuff to look for, right?
Yep, finishing up school, looking for jobs, and while I'm doing that, just watching a bunch of basketball.
Yeah, and you got to go to the state of basketball over the break, or I guess after you graduated. At this point now, you said that there were some talks about Indiana changing from a basketball school to a football school. Share your thoughts on that real quick.
Yeah. Like I always tell my friends that are IU fans that tell me that they're a football school. Like, if you're good in both, which one are you picking? And they always say basketball. So that's how I know they're a basketball school. But yeah, went to Indiana, went to a few Purdue games, and unfortunately had to hear it from all the IU fans the whole time.
Yes, I'm sure they're enjoying their trash talk that they have never had in previous well, I guess last year it started, right? But yeah, previously historically the worst football team in college football history. It's kind of crazy to think that they're on the precedent of earning a possible national championship this year. What's your early front runner for like national championship in NCAA basketball before we get to the Sunbelt specific stuff? You got somebody who's kind of looking the part right now, or what do you think?
Well, I got to roll with. I know I didn't go to school there, but my Boilermakers, I got to roll with them. But I feel like, yeah, like I said, it's just destiny for Purdue. Like, they're one of the best teams in the country. They got one of the best players in the country. The Final Four is in Indianapolis. It's the Big Three senior year. Like, I feel like the stars are aligning. But, Arizona looks really good. Michigan, I know they just lost, but they were beating every team they played by like 50, even the good ones. Iowa State, I know they're losing right now, but they've looked really good. So, there's probably like 5 or 6 teams that I would still consider like top of the top.
That makes sense. What are your thoughts on the Final Four? Like, obviously, we're going to have upsets and fun in the NCAA tournament. You think this Final Four this year is still going to be like pretty much the top 4 teams, like kind of how it's been? Like, yeah, there's some fun, there's some Cinderellas, but once it gets down to that Elite Eight, that Final Four, we got like the true best of the best left in this tournament.
Yeah, like last year was the 4-1 seeds in the Final Four. So I think the top end of the sport right now is just so good that, like, when it comes down to it, it might not be the 4-1 seeds, but it'll be probably the 4 best teams in the country. I don't think there's going to have like a Cinderella run where like an 8 seed goes to the Final Four or anything.
That makes sense. Yeah. If you look at the conferences, and I'm sure you've done this too, Zach, but if you look at the top 4 conferences in major college basketball, I think there's like, out of all 4 conferences combined, right now, I think there's like 3 or 4 maybe teams that have losing records, and everybody else has a winning record. That is not the case in any of the mid-major conferences. You got stuff all over the place. You've got a lot of mid-majors who have more teams with losing records than they have winning records. Luckily, that's not necessarily the case for the Sun Belt, although it's close, I guess. But we're looking okay in that regard. But there's some conferences out there that are very, very bad, with, maybe lucky to have one team with a winning conference record right now, or not conference record, but just overall record. And I guess that's kind of what we see at the beginning of the season when a lot of these teams beat up on some lower level teams, I guess, right?
Yeah. And also just like, I think was it Tom Izzo after JMU beat Michigan State a few years ago? Tom Izzo came out and was like, I'm not playing a team as good as JMU on the first weekend again, or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, so like they're not going to choose teams that can actually beat them unless like they'll play like other high major opponents, because that's actually beneficial to them and what they'll see in conference play and stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of those teams don't want to play like the top of the top mid-major teams. Like Miami of
That makes
Ohio,
sense.
Miami of Ohio is 18-0 right now, but they never played I don't think they played a high major in the non-con.
Well, maybe they'll still be undefeated when one of our sunbelt teams gets a shot at them. Do you know off the top of your head who's matched up with them?
They're at Marshall.
Ooh, interesting. Because that's a little rivalry history from that one, I believe. So that could be a fun one, even if they aren't quite undefeated at that point anymore. But something to look forward to for those that don't remember the MAC Sunbelt Challenge. I think most teams' first game of the year was the MAC Sunbelt Challenge, right? In our conference.
Yeah, I think they have 12 in their conference. I think, or no, 13.
Yeah.
So one school gets left out every year from our conference. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, and we had more than that last year, I feel like, because Marshall was not participating.
Yeah, there was two last year. Yeah, two last year because they added UMass.
That's right. Okay.
So I think it might have been ULM that didn't play this year.
Okay. Makes sense because they're kind of they're not the only one, but maybe one of the more outliers as far as like who do they regionally kind of make sense to match up with. But anyway, that's a fun one, and we get the return games on that, early February. So those coming up not too long from now. So it'll be interesting to see where we stand against some of the tougher opponents in the MAC conference. Historically pretty good basketball conference, right, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably like Sunbelt level, I would say. I think that's the whole reason that they chose to do this challenge, because they're pretty similar in conferences.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, this is our really our first official full-fledged basketball show of the season. Zach did a great job doing some interviews for us before the season got started, and that was good to find out about some of the teams that we got to get up with. Not all of them, obviously, but he's been writing. So if you're following along on sunbeltsyndicate.com, be sure to check out Zach's stuff. We just launched your preview of Coastal's basketball week coming up, which starts tomorrow or today if you're listening on Wednesday. And we also had Sullivan Toe do James Madison. So those two are up on the site. We're trying to add more writers to take care of more of the weekly type previews for basketball, because we do typically have at least 2 games a week. And at some point we might have 3 games a week. But typically it's, what is it? Either Tuesday, Wednesday, and then mostly Saturdays, right?
Either Wednesday or Thursday. Usually Thursday. It's usually Thursday, okay. Saturday, but Thursday. Like Coastal has to go from Marshall to Georgia Southern, so they play on Wednesday. But yeah, Wednesday or Thursday, and then Saturday.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we are going to try and do these shows live as best we can, Sunday nights or Monday nights, to kind of wrap you guys up pretty well, put a bow on the weekend or the week that happened, and then also give you some time to take in this show before the week ahead. And then obviously, again, sunbeltsyndicate.com to check out everything that you can in between. We still have some people writing about football. As we know, football never stops. Really, basketball never stops. I mean, transfer portal exists in all sports, so nothing ever stops, nothing ever sleeps. There's always going to be some news going around. So be sure to just bookmark the website, give it a check every once in a while. Obviously, we'll push some specific articles and get our writers some attention that way. But we're going to jump into this first real episode of the Round Ball Roundup. And we've got 2 of the top teams in the conference here on the front of the screen, picture, logo, whatever you want to call this for the podcast or show. That includes Arkansas State and Georgia Southern. That's not who's at the top of the conference standings, though. Those are just the 2 best kind of overall records as it sits right now. But we're going to get into the conference standings. And Zach, I want you to start off here and just kind of spell out what you think is standing out to you when you first look at the standings. Obviously, it's early, but just anything that you think is a shock in either a positive or a negative when it comes to the Sunbelt Basketball Conference right now?
Yeah, I mean, we still have 4 teams that only have 1 loss in the conference. That's kind of crazy. Um, Old Dominion, I thought they were going to be really good this year. So same with Louisiana. They're both towards the bottom of the conference. The middle, I think this year, the middle of the conference is going to be crazy. I mean, you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9 that are between 3 and 2 and 2 and 4. And I think it's going to be like that all year. I think we're going to see a bunch of teams finish like around the 8-8 or 9-9 or however many games they play. But yeah, I think the middle of the conference is going to be insane.
Yeah, I think that kind of what makes it fun. But like you said, you want a number of teams at the top to make it fun to watch and figure out who's going to finish up there specifically. Because let's be honest, that Mortal Kombat type postseason tournament is something to behold, and we know we went through that last year. But because of how it is laid out, it's going to favor those teams that have the best records from the regular season. So these top 4 teams right now, if this season were to end today, are likely to be some of your last teams standing in the end. I don't know. I guess, you've got South Alabama there at 3-2, just outside those top 4, as you'd call it right now, but their overall record looks pretty good at just 12-5. I'm trying to think. I mean, Marshall's 11-6, so they're not far off. App State's, I don't know. App State's pretty close to 500 at 10-8 overall. But do you see anybody who's not currently in those top 4 that you think has a real legitimate shot to get in there and stay there?
Not in the top 4, probably South Alabama if I had to pick one.
Yeah, which makes sense because jumping over to last year's standings, that was our top finisher from the regular season. So this is a look at last season. We had South Alabama followed closely by James Madison, Arkansas State, Troy, Marshall, App State, which, besides James Madison, is very similar to what we're seeing on that left side of that top 7 teams. We got 7 on the left, 7 on the right. And as we know, and Zach and I were talking about before we started recording, there is no East and West in Sunbelt basketball. It is a total free-for-all. You got a lot of teams playing each other throughout the season. As we know, Texas State will be finishing up their last season. They were kind of in that top half, just barely last year, as we look at these final standings from 24-25. But this year, they're sitting down there 2-4 in the conference, just 9-9 overall. I guess they're kind of middling again. So could we see them get up into that top 7? Again, there's nothing specific about the top 7. It's just for this current standings layout that we're using. There's 7 on the left, 7 on the right. But I don't know. Coastal's jumped up a little bit from last season. Do you think that they could go on a run, Zach? That's a team you're very close to right now.
I think if they can find a consistent 4th option, then I think they can be good. But relying on their 3 guards just every game, it's going to be tough because, I mean, if 1 or 2 of them have a bad night, then what are you going to do? So, I mean, I know like Reggie Hill's been stepping up the last few games, but like I said, I think they need to find a consistent 4th option if they want to keep winning games.
That makes sense. And I kind of jumped the gun on that one a little bit, but we'll start with Coastal. So you just gave us kind of a rundown on Coastal. Let's jump over to, let's start at the bottom. How about that? Let's start at the bottom. We'll talk about the top teams last. So ULM sitting at 0-6, 3-15 overall. I don't know. What do we know about them, or do we just not know anything except that they struggle to win games at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably like you. I don't watch much of ULM, but I mean, they made a questionable hire, I think, for most people at the beginning of the season, and then they had a super thin roster, and then they brought in a bunch of freshmen late, and then a few people got hurt before the season. So it's like it's just been bad. We'll have to, I guess, just wait and see if these freshmen can develop and see what the coach can do in year 2. But it's hard to watch them at times.
Yeah, it's hard to, like you said, even if you're not watching the game specifically, you're watching the scoreboard. I mean, there's been some competitive games, but let's just look at this one against ETSU, 97-55. Now, ETSU is no joke out of the SoCon conference. Pretty good basketball team routinely, but that's a team that I would say even, ULM should compete better than 97-55. But yeah, 3 wins on the season. 1 against Rust, 1 against Arkansas Baptist. And those are not D1 basketball teams. Mississippi Valley State, you said, is D1, Zach, but they are kind of towards the bottom of the barrel as far as D1 basketball is concerned.
Yeah, they're probably the worst team in Division I, if not the worst.
Yeah. All right. Well, it doesn't really improve because we can look at the standings from last year one more time. That 3-15 conference record, but just 7-25 overall. It doesn't necessarily look like it's going to improve for ULM this season. A team that's a little bit surprising, had a down year, another coaching change. This one, I was talking to Zach before again, thought this change not necessarily dramatically gets them towards the top of the conference or anything, but I thought the Cajuns may jump back up and be a little bit more competitive. Just 2-4 in the conference, 4-14 overall. Zach, your thoughts on the Cajuns so far this season?
Yeah, I think all of us thought that they're going to be at least a little bit better. I know, you get a new coach, you get a completely new team. You figure they'd be at least a little better. And I think they even got a first place vote in the preseason poll by the sunbelt. Yeah, and they just haven't been good. I know probably their best player, or he is their best player, has been out for pretty much the whole season. So that definitely doesn't help.
Right.
But yeah, they're 3-3 in their last 6 games. So I guess they're improving a little bit, but 2 of those are against ULM. So we'll have to see what they do against some better competition.
Yeah, and that 10-game winless streak, almost to start the season. They did get a win over Southeast Louisiana, but then they lost 10 straight games. I will say, for the most part, those 10 games, it's a decent track record of opponents that they played. I wouldn't say they should have waltzed through the 10 games, but obviously you can't lose 10 straight games and expect to be real competitive when it comes time for that aspect, and losing to a team like McNeese, an in-state school. I'm sure that one hurt them a little bit there in that one. Let's see the next team up, ODU. Kind of similar story to the Cajuns, but they were maybe 1 year ahead with the coach change. But what are we seeing out of the Monarchs so far this year? A little bit of a surprise, right?
Yeah, that's who I probably would have picked to win the conference in the preseason. They kind of found their stride a little bit towards the end of last year, brought in a really good transfer portal class, brought back some guys that were really good. But yeah, it just hasn't worked out at all at any point this year. They haven't won 2 in a row besides beating Randolph and Norfolk State. Other than that, they haven't won 2 in a row, so it's been a tough year for them.
Yeah, I will say though, where ODU's located and who they've kind of matched up with in the early part of the season. They've got Xavier on the schedule, Villanova, Richmond, who's sometimes pretty good, George Mason, who's been playing pretty well. So Maryland, which that one wasn't all that close, but some of those other games were fairly competitive. The Villanova game got away at the end, but yeah, it's been interesting. I was like you. I didn't necessarily think they'd be at the top, but I really thought they'd be much improved. And so far, we're just not seeing that out of them. Texas State, as again, we know that they're finishing up in this conference. I know season hopes and thoughts were really high for what they could do in football. They did not get there with how their defense didn't help them. It may be looking kind of the same way for basketball. What are your thoughts on the Bobcats so far?
Yeah, I mean, started out 6-2. I thought, okay, they need some momentum going into the Pac-12. Like
Right.
the Pac-12 isn't what it used to be, but it's still a bigger conference than the sunbelt. So, especially in basketball, when you add Gonzaga in there, so you got to be good, and it just hasn't been good enough. And I mean, if you can't win in the sunbelt, you're not going to be able to win in the Pac-12. So something's got to change eventually.
I get a question for you. So maybe you could tell me. Maybe it's not as great as I think, but I think it's a huge jump to go from Sunbelt to what that new Pac conference will be in basketball. Obviously there's other sports and other things at play with, funding and whatever is going to be coming along with it. But just in basketball alone, when you look at that schedule that they'll face next year compared to this one, because of that, because of what they're going to be in next year, and they're going to see some guys, you think there's a possibility that anybody player-wise or coach-wise is maybe planting a little bit of a seed to kind of raid the Sun Belt to some extent and take them with them to Texas State to then go play in this new Pac conference? I know that's like conspiracy theory level stuff, but it just makes sense that, like, hey, we're going to leave this conference, and they got rated by everybody else, as we've covered in the past. First, second, and third team, all Sun Belt members, pretty much all entered the portal after last season. Do you think we're going to see like a stronger roster built of Sun Belt players to enter into the Pac era for Texas State next year, possibly?
I mean, I guess it depends on the NIL. That's all that really. I feel like that's all it's really what's going to matter is just like how much NIL they can give. I also wouldn't be surprised if like some Sunbelt teams are sitting there looking at ULM's roster or Texas State's roster and being like, okay, you guys are leaving. You guys might not be quite good enough in the Pac-12. Like, stay in the conference where you're already good and come over here. So I wouldn't be surprised about that either.
That's a good point. I didn't really thought about it that way, but you could definitely do that. You could definitely be working both ways. So we'll see if anybody plays dirty when it's time to leave this conference. But just an interesting thing that I've been thinking about is like, hey, it's essentially like Signetti leaving for Indiana and taking, the JMU players, because if you look back at that, he actually took a player from Troy, a player from another Sunbelt school or two. Like he didn't just take James Madison guys. It's almost like he took notes and paid attention to the whole conference, the whole season, and then said, I'm going to take a Sunbelt all-star roster as best I can up to Indy with me. But yeah, interesting so far for that. But you're right. I mean, Texas State started hot and have certainly cooled off here as of late. We'll see if they can get it turned back around and heading in the right direction before they head off to the Pac. So just above them, you've kind of covered Coastal. Is there anything else that you want to mention or talk about with the Chanticleers before we go up to James Madison?
No, I mean, they're improving, right? Great took over kind of like a bad program the last few years of the Cliff Ellis era. And then he took over, had a kind of a down first year, but I mean, it's gotten better. I know there's been some fans on like Twitter or on social media or whatever, just been like, every time he loses a game, they're like, fire him. He doesn't win. Like, I mean, you got to look at where he's taking over the program at.
Yeah. And
it was in a bad state, and he's come in. He's helped get some money into the program, and it's improving. I mean, it's not Coastal Carolina football or baseball where like you're expected to win, like you have to win. Like there isn't like that long history of Coastal basketball like there is in baseball or football. So I mean, it's going to take some time, but like I said, it's getting better.
Yeah, and I would think, especially at a school like Coastal, also with Southern Miss, maybe even Troy to some extent, but like these schools that are good in baseball, like they're probably pumping a little bit more money into baseball in some regards than they are basketball. So like I feel like a lot of our schools that could be good in one other sport besides football are pushing almost against each other in some regards. Like basketball and baseball are fighting over what's left. And if you're good at one of them, I would assume that it's going to be the one that they put the more money in. So again, coastal baseball is obviously top notch. I would assume that, a lot of more funds are allocated towards that venture at the moment. All it takes is one good run, right? One March Madness run, and Coastal Carolina is going to be throwing more money at basketball all of a sudden. But yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle for our coaches in basketball, I feel like, in this conference. But we'll see what happens. Okay, the surprise to me, James Madison. We'll pull this back up real quick. Just 2-3 overall. It's not insurmountable at all. But to me, the surprising part is that 9-8 overall record. If you look outside of what they've played in the conference so far, it wasn't a tremendously difficult out of conference schedule, but they're just over 500 as it sits right now. What are your thoughts on the Dukes?
Yeah, they're definitely having a down year. I mean, I feel like we said this before, but if you just look at their roster and just look at them, no shade to any of them, but like it's not what we've been used to seeing out of JMU the last few years. Like it's just name recognition wise. So I mean, I kind of expected them to take a step back a little bit this year, but I mean 9-8, 2-3 in the conference. Yeah, definitely not looking too hot.
Yeah, not at all. A team that was not looking too hot and does not have a good overall record. Georgia State, just above them in the standings, sits 6-12 overall, but they're about halfway down in the conference because they are 3-3. So what's gotten into these Panthers as of late?
Yeah, I said this to somebody, but they've been playing like the best ball in the conference like lately. Like they've looked really good. Obviously didn't start off too well. I think it's safe to say that the coaching staff definitely on the hot seat. They have it's their third or fourth year now, and they just it hasn't been that good. And they still might be on the hot seat, but if they keep playing like this, they'll definitely start creeping up on teams and start creeping up the standings.
Yeah, they've got wins over App State, Coastal, and Marshall. And
then lost to App State by 2 in Boone as well.
Yeah. And then that loss to Marshall. It's weird how many teams have already played each other twice and like are done with each other to me. But they've both beaten Marshall and lost to Marshall. And like you said, that loss to App State was close. The loss to Marshall was also close. That was just 4 points.
They completely blew that game. I watched that one. They should have won that one too.
So yeah, maybe they're starting to hit their stride a little bit here in conference play. They've got a game that they should be expected to win somewhat soundly against ULM, but they do travel to Louisiana for that. So we'll see if, I know the one downside that I can remember specifically from last year, Zach, and again, it just seems to be a problem across the board with mid-majors, to be honest. It's very hard for them to win away from home court. Like it just, for whatever reason, the away records for most of these teams are just atrocious. And again, that's not just the sunbelt. I'm talking a lot of mid-majors out there. Besides that, your teams that are Miami of Ohio's who are undefeated and such, it ain't easy to win on the road in college basketball. So it'll be interesting to see if Georgia State goes down there and struggles or has a close game with ULM, as we talked about ULM being at the bottom of this conference already. So
yeah,
we'll just have to see what happens there.
Yeah, Coach. I feel like every time in the post-game press conference with Coach Gray, it's said at least one time. He always says it's hard to win in this league. Like he says it at least one time every single press conference. And then this last one, they're going back on the road this week. And this last one, he was like, it's hard to win in this league on the road. Like it's kind of a thing that he just says, but it's true. I mean, every conference, even the big conference, it's hard to win on the road. But I mean, especially in like the sunbelt, if you look at some of these road records, like ULM 0-9, Louisiana 1-8, Old Dominion 1-10, Texas State 1-6, JMU 2-7. I mean, the best record in the conference on the road, there's 4 teams that are 5-4, so just above 500.
Yep. Yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's you talk about home field advantage in football, and it seems to be tried and true, but I think it's even more of a aspect in basketball, right? Like it is hard to go on the road and play in a gym that's not yours. I mean, the reflection off of, I think we've got a couple teams in our league that have like windows where actual sunlight could come in and affect, a spot on the court, when they shoot, when they're carrying the ball down the court. It's just so many different aspects that, in a big football stadium, the grass is still always the same, essentially, except, I guess artificial to natural grass. But, I feel like it's just more noticeable when all those small factors matter in a basketball game like that. But we'll see what happens. See if we can get some teams to improve on the road, because we desperately need it. Just above Georgia State, tied in the standings technically right now at 3-3. The only 3-3 teams in conference is App State. They are 10-8 overall, as we covered. Is this a team that's kind of sitting where you expect, or are they under or overperforming possibly?
I mean, I would say they're probably slightly underperforming. I mean, it's definitely not the App State team that we're used to, and like I said with JMU, if you just look at the roster, it's definitely not as good as we're used to. But I mean, they're still a solid team that's going to be tough to beat, especially at home.
And I'd agree with that. And it's weird. They just can't seem to get into that stride. Like they can't that next level. They've literally alternated wins and losses since they've got into conference play.
And they're
win loss.
But they're tough to
flipping. They flip, like they beat somebody, then they lose to them, or they lose to them and then they beat them. Like it's crazy that so fast.
They're tough to prepare for as well, I should say, because they play two traditional centers, like Marcus and Wilson. They're traditional 6'10", 250 bigs. I mean, a lot of the teams in the conference, they play 4 guards and a big, or 4 guards, and Georgia Southern plays 4 guards and a 6'7" forward. And a lot of teams play 3 guards and a wing and a big, but they play 2 guards, a wing, and 2 bigs. So they're going to be tough to prepare for. I know, like I said, their roster isn't as good, but they're still tough to prepare for, especially on short notice for the teams that get them second in the week, on Saturday.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, well, we'll get to that one. I'll have notes about the one team that I've seen in person so far this year. All right, going back to the standings so we can just refresh where we're at. Marshall just above App State and Georgia State with a 3-2 record, 11-6 overall. They've got a pretty good big over there for the Thundering Herd. What can you tell us about the Kelly Green Marshall Thundering Herd here?
I feel like they're like pretty much every team that we've said, they're kind of having a down year for their standards. We're used to seeing them up competing at the top, and I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but they start off the season good with 3 big wins: UMass, Toledo, and Elon. And then they kind of went on a little stretch where they lost some games, but they're starting to pick it back up a little bit. It'll be interesting to see. I feel like they're dealing with a little bit of injury issues, but they could be a team that is scary to play in March. Yeah,
I'd agree with you. It's like you said, you expect Marshall to be at the top every year, top 4 or 5 teams all the time, and then they certainly can be at the very top when they excel. They really, the only shocking loss in conference so far has been Georgia State that got a win over them, which is a little bit surprising for me to see. It's not really surprising that the only other loss is to Troy with what they did, and that game was competitive. So it's just, can they get on the right side of it more often? But yeah, they've been pretty good, except for, like you said, they had Lipscomb, UNCW, and Ohio, that little bad 3-game stretch. Otherwise, this team doesn't lose 2 games in a row. So that's a plus. And when you're looking at the end of the season, going on a run, playing good, consistent basketball, that Marshall's one of those teams for me that could certainly get up into that top 4 real quickly here. And we'll see if they continue to shine as we go along. South Alabama above them, same record though, 3-2, but favored in the standings because of that 12-5 overall record. What do you make of last year's regular season champion so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same South Alabama that we're all used to. The team that takes 0 Division I transfers or very little Division I transfers. They play the super wacky zone that most teams aren't used to seeing, and then on the offensive end they hit shots. So I know they're another team that's dealt with some injury issues. Peyton Law, I think I saw something. He's trying to get a medical red shirt. Played in 10 games. Was one of their best players. But yeah, like I mean, it's the South Alabama we're all used to. They're not going to be the flashiest team or the most fun team to watch or any of that, but they're going to find ways to win.
Makes sense. And like you said, they started off winning. They had that 6-0 record to start with. They were in a lot of that mid-major polls very early in the season. They didn't necessarily play a ton of teams that were overly impressive, but that first win on the road at Toledo, probably their best, maybe so far this year. They did get beat by ETSU and North Texas 2 games in a row. But again, another team that struggles to lose games consecutively, which is a good thing. That's a good trait to have when it comes time for postseason play. Just above them, their favorite rival, the Troy Trojans. We know Scott Cross just continues to collect those 20-win seasons. Zach, is he well on his way again?
Yeah, I mean, 11-6. I think it might be a little tougher this year to get to that 20 wins. They might have to do it in like the conference tournament to get there, because winning 9 more games in conference is going to be really hard. But it's the same. Like I said with South Alabama, it's the same Troy team we're used to. Not taking many transfers, developing from within, and then finding ways to like gut out wins. I mean, they played in maybe the game of the year in college basketball in that double OT or triple OT. Was it? I think it was triple. No,
I think it was.
Yeah, triple OT against USC at like 1 a.m. in the morning. Yeah,
yeah,
that was really like one of the best games of the year.
Yeah, I remember being awake for some unknown reason. I don't know what day of the week was this. Was this over like a Thanksgiving?
Cooper Campbell, the point guard, went absolutely berserk.
Yep, 10 of 19 from the floor.
He hit that big three. I think it was after the first overtime that sent it to double OT or something.
Yeah, his stat line: 32 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. The leader in every category for his team.
He might be on a Power 5 roster next year just because of that game.
That's insane. That is insane. It was November 21st. I don't know how close to Thanksgiving that was, but I feel like it was Thanksgiving break time. I remember just being awake for some reason going, holy crap, this game is still going on. 106-107. Unfortunately, they lost it.
They lost on a buzzer beater in triple overtime.
Insanity. Yeah. I mean, if you watch SportsCenter, pay attention to ESPN, it was all over that when it happened. So, and then the game before that, they won 108-107 over San Diego State. So they were in 2 crazy games in a row, and they did win that one, luckily, like I said. So we'll see what they do. Sitting 4-1, 11-6 overall, just above them. I'll take this one to start with. Georgia Southern. This is the team I actually saw in person down at Georgia Tech. And like you said, interesting to see, an ACC team in Georgia Tech, the way they play a traditional, big man in the middle, plays a lot of minutes, but not necessarily insanely athletic, right? That's what the big men, that's what they're for. And I don't think, if I can remember correctly, Georgia Tech's center being like any kind of outside shooter like we've seen sometimes, like for Purdue, for you, Zach, like some of those bigs for for some of those power programs that are more closely to the top of NCAA basketball, some of those guys can actually shoot from outside. I don't remember that for Georgia Tech in that one, but I was really impressed with the Eagles and what they did. I actually thought they should have won that game there at Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech's nothing insane that I'm aware of this year, but it was just a couple unlucky bounces, maybe some questionable calls. I don't think the questionable calls were too crazy, but probably didn't really get any help in that regard. But a guy by the name of Spud Webb seems to be playing pretty good ball for them, right, Zach?
Yeah, him and Tyron Moore are kind of their two guys that they rely on. But yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, they're also weird. They play like four guards and a center who's like 6'7". So it's like that's another team that's kind of hard to prepare for, just because they don't play usual. But yeah, they've definitely been impressive this year.
Yeah, Carter was the forward for them that I was when I watched him. I thought he was pretty good. Impressed with his game. That was kind of, it's funny as mostly an App State fan now. Obviously, with doing this, my fandom has changed greatly. But my background as an App State fan, it's weird to say Georgia Southern looks like one of those teams that might be the best team in this conference this year. They've got a real shot and chance and opportunity. Zach and I both thought last year may have been that step for Georgia Southern. It didn't quite happen, but this year seems to be rolling along quite good for them so far. Last year, Arkansas State looked like they were going to come into this year being the top team, clear, far and away. Then the coach leaves. Then he takes some players. Now they've got a different head coach, different roster. But Zach, again, 4-1 in conference, 12-5 overall. The Red Wolves of Arkansas State. Thoughts on them so far this season?
Yeah, they went back to the well and got an Alabama assistant to take over as their head coach. And if it keeps going like this, they might be looking for another Alabama assistant in the next year or two. Because, like Hodgson, I think Panone runs a lot of really good offense, and they play really good offense. But yeah, they're tough to beat. Their only loss in conference is JMU at home, which is a tough loss. But yeah, they're gonna definitely be up there at the end of the season.
Yeah, they had a 2-game skid. Again, another team that struggles to lose 2 games in a row, which is a good trait. St. Mary's, which is an extremely difficult team to beat, especially on the road. And then they back that up with the somewhat new ACC member in SMU, who is, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, SMU is a pretty darn good basketball team this year, right?
I believe, yeah. I think before the last ball, I think they were ranked. They competed with Duke. They had a good game with Duke the other day, too.
Yeah. Did they beat Duke? Who did they?
No.
They beat somebody that was pretty good the other day, I think. Let me see if I can pull that up too, because I feel like SMU is kind of on the rise. They were undefeated when they beat Arkansas State and stayed undefeated after that victory there. They beat North Carolina 97-83. So SMU, no joke, as we know North Carolina routinely good, but also were ranked number 12 at the time that SMU beat them. So yeah, 2 teams, no shame in Arkansas State losing those 2 games. Obviously they want to win them, but again, both of those games being on the road might be a team that's kind of battle tested because of that kind of stuff in the early season. And now we've come to the team that sits atop of the conference all by themselves, mainly because they've played one more game than a lot of the others. But they are currently sitting at 5-1 in conference, 11-7 overall. Southern Miss, but Zach, maybe we have a little pause at why they're at the top of the conference, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still questionable on them. I feel like they kind of been up and down. They lost to Grambling. They struggled with North Florida. They should have beat South Carolina, but in conference, they're 5-1 with 4 of those wins being the Louisiana schools, and then their 5th one being Texas State. So, I mean, they're definitely good, but I don't know if they're the best team in the conference good yet until they showing me that they can beat like they got Troy coming up, or they played Marshall or South Alabama. Like if they can beat one of those schools, then they're for real. But I still feel like I have to see it a little bit more.
No, it's a great point. It's like you say. I mean, early season, people that aren't paying attention as well, and this is what this show is for, right? For some of our fans that maybe haven't quite fully bought into basketball season just yet, this is to help that. This is to help understand that. So yes, they are sitting at the top of this conference, but maybe a little bit of fool's gold. But like Zach said, they have every opportunity to prove us wrong or prove themselves right that they do belong at the top. But just a little bit of a pause there with where those 5 victories came from is a great point by Zach there, and wanted to be sure he got to note that. So before we get out of here, we've got some of the top players in this conference. We went through a lot of the teams. We didn't get real name specific on too many, but now we will jump into that. So we've got some leaders so far in this conference in points per game. Well, there you go, Zach. There's one reason why Southern Miss sits atop, right? Tyleik Weeks.
Yeah, he's been really good. They also had Isaac Taveras, who was averaging like 20 something a game, but I believe he's hurt. But yeah, those two guys have been really good. Christian Lewis has been the bright spot on a bad team, and then I feel like every time I watch South Alabama, Chase Harris goes absolutely crazy. So yeah, all 5 of these guys have been very important to their teams.
Yeah, Justin McBride stepping it up for JMU there with 17.7. And yeah, I don't know how much you can see it on the graphic here, but Chaz Harris and then Adam Olson are on the same team with 16.9 and 16.6 points per game, respectively, with South Alabama. So they're once again, another reason why you can look for the Jags to be up towards the top of this conference when it's all said and done. So that's points per game. Again, Weeks, the leader at 18.0 currently. Now we'll jump over to rebounds per game. A guy we've had on the show now twice, Zach. Lead us off with the person leading the conference in rebounds.
Yeah, Thomas Dowd. He's only person in the conference averaging double-digit rebounds. Just been a monster. Done it all for Troy this year, and he's kind of had to. He's the upperclassman. He's been there, so he's the only returning starter from last year. So he's kind of had to do a lot of it. DJ Hall has been DJ Hall's been a really impressive freshman for Texas State, who could be following them to the Pac-12 next year, or could be heading somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting enough, we got a Warhawk up there, which is second in the conference in rebounds per game. So again, from top to bottom, we've got some really talented players in this conference. It's just interesting to see how some of these stats play out in this early part of the season, see if these guys can stay where they are for now. And we'll wrap this one up with blocks per game. And again, we mentioned Marshall in their game, their bigs usually being pretty good. Matt Van Komen, am I pronouncing that one right, Zach, from what you know?
Yeah, Matt Van Komen, 7'4" center. Averaging 2.5 blocks a game and only like 20 minutes a game too. And actually, if you look at a lot of these guys on this list, they're not playing a ton of minutes, so it's kind of impressive to see. But yeah, we got some real rim protectors in the sunbelt.
Yeah, we got some real good ones, and some of the pictures here are helpful with that regard. Again, Carter for Georgia Southern was one that I've seen in person and was impressed with his game. I've seen Luke Wilson in person in the past. Definitely got some really, really strong attributes to his game. See if he can continue to round that into form. And you've seen Pete in person. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, this is what he does. He's a rim protecting big. He doesn't do much offensively, but he's a rim protecting big. He's has like a ton of blocks in his career coming from the Division II level, but he's a good defensive center.
Yeah, and Christian Brown, want to shout him out for James Madison, trying to round those Dukes back into form. All right, that is going to wrap it up for this first real episode of the Round Ball Roundup this season. We will get into more and better specifics as we go along, but we wanted to kind of catch everybody up here. We know it's been crazy. You got Thanksgiving, you had football season wrapping up, we had a team in the college football playoff, which was crazy, and so everything's just kind of been piling up on Zach specifically as he's trying to finish up school and get out there into the real world, right, and experience everything. But luckily enough, we still have our expert with us. Again, check out sunbeltsyndicate.com for everything he's putting together on the basketball side of things, and we'll obviously be coming to you on a more weekly routine here. And Zach, any last notes before we get out of here?
Nope, just excited to see the rest of the college basketball season and get to March.
Same, man. Well, that'll do it for us here at Sunbelt Syndicate, and we'll see you guys next time.
Sunbelt Syndicate.